First story. My family disowned me, believing my ex-girlfriend's false cheating accusations, and didn't even bother to apologize when the truth came out. Now, 4 years later, they demand I show up at my sister's wedding to save face. I was sitting on the couch after work, sorting through emails, when I noticed one from my sister, Lisa. We hadn't spoken in 4 years, not since everything went down with Claire, so seeing her name caught me off guard. The subject line just said, "Come to my wedding." I stared at it for a while before opening it. I wasn't even sure why she was emailing me after all this time. The last real conversation we'd had was her yelling at me over the phone, calling me all sorts of things I won't bother repeating. After that, she cut me off, and the rest of my family followed. It had been radio silence since then. The email itself was short and to the point. Lisa said she was getting married in a couple of months and that she wanted me there. She didn't acknowledge anything that had happened, didn't apologize or explain. She just said something about family being family and how it would mean a lot if I came. She even attached the invitation, as if I'd already agreed. I closed the email without responding. I guess I should back up a bit. 4 years ago, I was dating Claire, who I'd been with for 3 years at that point. At first, things were good between us, but by the last year of our relationship, it was clear things weren't working. Claire had this way of turning every argument into a personal attack against me. If I said I didn't like something, she'd twist it into me calling her inadequate or unlovable. I was walking on eggshells constantly, trying not to set her off. When I finally worked up the nerve to tell her I thought we should break up, she broke down crying and begged me to reconsider. She said she'd change, and that she couldn't imagine her life without me. I was tired and emotionally drained, so I agreed to give it another chance. That was my first mistake. A few months later, I got a message from Lisa, my sister, out of the blue. She sent me screenshots of texts Claire had shown her messages that supposedly proved I was cheating. According to the screenshots, I'd been texting some woman, calling her babe, and making plans to meet up. I was floored. I hadn't sent those texts. I didn't even know the number Claire claimed belonged to this woman. I tried to explain that to Lisa, but she wasn't having it. She called me a liar and said I was disgusting for betraying Claire like that. She said she didn't even want to look at me. It didn't stop there. Claire had apparently gone to my parents with the same screenshots. They called me, furious, demanding to know what kind of man I'd become. When I told them the texts were fake, my dad cut me off mid-sentence and said Claire wouldn't make something like this up. Within a week, my entire family had sided with Claire. They called me a cheater, a manipulator, a liar, whatever words Claire had fed them. My mom said I'd embarrassed the family, and my dad told me not to bother coming around anymore. Even extended family got involved. At one point, I saw my aunt post something about me on Facebook, calling me the black sheep of the family. I tried to defend myself, but it was no use. Claire had them wrapped around her finger, and no one wanted to hear my side. After they disowned me, I hit a really low point. I'd lost not just my girlfriend, but my entire family in one blow. It was humiliating and isolating. The only people who stuck by me were Jake, my best friend, and Sophie, who I eventually started dating a couple of years later. Sophie was the one who helped me start to put my life back together. But the scars from that whole ordeal haven't gone away. Here's the kicker, though. About a year after all this, Lisa found out the truth. One of her friends, someone who was also close with Claire, reached out to her with proof that Claire had faked everything. Apparently, Claire had been feeling insecure and thought I might break up with her, so she made up the cheating story to get ahead of it. She even admitted to photoshopping the texts. Lisa called me after she found out. She was crying and apologizing, saying she didn't know how she could have believed Claire over me. She said our parents felt terrible too, but didn't know how to approach me after everything. I told her it was too little, too late. At that point, I'd already cut them out of my life. So, now here we are. 4 years later, Lisa decides to reach out because she's getting married. I don't know if she's doing it out of guilt, or if she just doesn't want to explain to her wedding guests why her brother isn't there. Either way, I'm not interested. They made their choice back then, and I've made mine now. Comments. Comment 1. Wait, so your family never reached out at all after they found out Claire lied? Not even an apology from your parents? How did they expect you to just move on without acknowledging what they did? OP. Not a single apology, at least not directly to me. Lisa was the only one who called me after she found out, and even then, it felt like she was trying to do damage control more than anything. She said my parents felt bad about what happened, but didn't know how to approach me. Honestly, That pissed me off even more. I don't care how awkward or uncomfortable they felt if they had an ounce of regret. They could have picked up the phone or written me a letter. But no, they just left it up to Lisa to handle while pretending it never happened. From where I'm sitting, it seems like they wanted to sweep everything under the rug. I think they assumed that time would heal everything, and that eventually, I'd come crawling back. Spoiler, I'm not crawling anywhere. Comment 2. Okay, but don't you think it's kind of petty to hold this grudge for so long? People make mistakes, and maybe they didn't know how to fix things back then. Isn't a wedding a good opportunity to mend fences? OP. I don't think it's petty to protect myself from people who've already proven they won't have my back when it matters. If they had made a mistake and owned it, maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But they didn't. They chose to believe Claire without even giving me a chance to explain. And then they doubled down by cutting me off completely and trashing my name to the rest of the family. It's not like I'm angry 24/7 or holding on to this out of spite. I've moved on with my life. But that doesn't mean I'm going to open the door for them to hurt me again. Lisa reaching out now feels more like she wants to ease her own guilt than actually make amends. Also, let's be real. If this wedding wasn't happening, do you think they'd suddenly care about reconnecting? I doubt it. Comment 3. I don't understand why your family was so quick to take Claire's side. Did she have some weird hold on them? Or is there more to the story with your parents? Why were they so ready to cut you off? OP. Yeah, I've asked myself that a lot, too. Looking back, I think it was a combination of things. First, Claire had always been really close with my family, especially my mom and Lisa. My mom used to gush about how she was the perfect girl for me, and Lisa looked up to her like an older sister. So when Claire came to them with proof that I cheated, they didn't question it because they already thought the world of her. Second, I've always had a rocky relationship with my dad. He's the kind of guy who sees the world in black and white. And once he labels someone as the bad guy, that's it, you're done. I think he saw the situation as a chance to play moral authority. And since Claire had what looked like solid evidence, it was easy for him to write me off. It's also worth mentioning that I'm not as close with my family as Lisa is. She's the golden child, and I've always been more of an afterthought. I don't think they hated me or anything, but I also don't think they valued me enough to fight for me when things got messy. If I'm being honest, I think they're reaching out now because they realize Lisa's wedding is going to look weird without her brother there. It feels less like they miss me and more like they want to save face. Update. After my original post, I assumed things would blow over once I ignored Lisa's email. I figured they'd get the hint, but of course, that's not what happened. My family isn't the type to let things go quietly, especially when they feel like they're losing control of a narrative. What started with an ignored invitation spiraled into calls, guilt trips, and messages from family members I hadn't heard from in years. It all started with a call from my dad. Seeing his name pop up on my phone was a shock. We hadn't spoken in 4 years, not since the fallout with Claire, and he hadn't even attempted to contact me when the truth came out. For him to suddenly call out of the blue, I knew it had to do with Lisa's wedding. I answered, mostly because I wanted to see what he had to say. I wasn't expecting much, and to his credit, he didn't disappoint. He jumped straight to the point, saying Lisa had told him I wasn't coming to her wedding and that I needed to reconsider. His tone wasn't apologetic. If anything, he sounded annoyed, like my refusal was some kind of personal inconvenience. He went on about how family should stick together, and how this was an opportunity to move forward. I stayed quiet for the most part, letting him talk, but it was obvious he wasn't interested in actually addressing the past. Eventually, I cut in and told him that I didn't see the point in attending. I reminded him that they had completely disowned me when Claire made her accusations, and that it wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a deliberate choice. They believed Claire over me without hesitation, and when the truth came out, they didn't even have the decency to apologize. His response: mistakes were made, and everyone was hurt by what happened. But it's time to move on. Hearing that phrase felt like a slap in the face. It was so dismissive, as if cutting me out of their lives, trashing my name, and ignoring me for years was some minor oversight. I told him that moving on wasn't that simple for me, and that trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt just because they suddenly wanted it to be. He didn't take that well. He said I was being stubborn and accused me of holding a grudge. He framed it like I was punishing the entire family over something that was in the past. The lack of accountability was almost laughable. At that point, I could feel the conversation going in circles, so I decided to end it on my terms. Just before hanging up, I casually mentioned that I was engaged now to a wonderful woman named Sophie, and that we were building a happy life together. The silence on the other end of the line was satisfying, to say the least. He didn't congratulate me, didn't ask about Sophie, didn't say a word. After a pause, I said, "I guess I'm doing just fine without the family," and hung up. Not long after that call, Lisa sent me another email. This one was more emotional than the first. She accused me of being cruel and said I was punishing the family over one mistake. She painted the wedding as a chance for a fresh start and said it would ruin her day if I didn't show up. The email was full of the same guilt-tripping language I've come to expect from her. She kept emphasizing how this was about moving forward and how people would notice if I wasn't there. It was clear she was more concerned about appearances than actually repairing our relationship. What really got me, though, was when she wrote, "Even Claire admitted she was wrong. Why can't you move on?" That line pissed me off more than anything. Claire didn't apologize to me ever. She admitted she lied because someone caught her, not because she felt bad. And even if she had apologized, it wouldn't erase the fact that my family abandoned me without a second thought. Lisa acting like Claire's forced confession should magically fix everything was insulting. A few days later, my mom called. Her approach was more of the same, but with an added dose of emotional manipulation. She started by saying she didn't understand why I was being so stubborn and refusing to reconcile. Then she brought up memories from when I was a kid, trying to tug at my heartstrings. She said things like, "We've all made mistakes, but family is family," as if that somehow excused what they did. She even tried to spin it like they were the victims, saying they didn't know how to approach me after everything happened. I stayed calm and told her the same thing I told my dad. Trust isn't something that magically reappears after it's broken. They had years to apologize and make things right, and they chose not to. Waiting until Lisa's wedding to suddenly care about me wasn't about fixing our relationship. It was about avoiding embarrassment. She started crying at that point, saying I was breaking her heart, and that she just wanted us to be a family again. I told her I wasn't interested in rebuilding something that was so easy for them to throw away. After that, things escalated even further. Somehow, word got out to the rest of the family, and suddenly, I was getting bombarded with messages. Cousins, aunts, and even family friends were chiming in, telling me I needed to let go of the past. Some were outright hostile, calling me selfish and accusing me of ruining Lisa's big day. Others tried to downplay what happened, saying, "It's been years. Aren't you over it by now?" It was frustrating, to say the least. None of them seemed to care about what I went through or how their betrayal affected me. They just wanted me to show up and play nice, so the family could look picture perfect again. The only person who seemed to get it was my uncle, my mom's brother. He called me privately and said he didn't blame me for staying away. He told me he'd tried talking to my parents about how they handled things with Claire, but they refused to take responsibility. That call meant a lot, but it didn't change the fact that the rest of the family was doubling down. After a particularly nasty text from one of my cousins, I decided I'd had enough. I sent Lisa one final message, laying everything out. I told her I wasn't coming to the wedding and that I didn't want to hear from her or anyone else about it again. I explained that their betrayal had permanently damaged our relationship and that their recent attempts to guilt me into attending only reinforced why I couldn't trust them. I also told her that while I wasn't angry anymore, I didn't see the point in trying to rebuild something with people who had already shown me how little they valued me. I wished her well and ended the conversation there. Since then, things have been quiet. I don't know if they've finally accepted my decision or if they're just regrouping for another attempt. But either way, I feel good about where I stand. For those asking why I didn't try harder to reconcile, the answer is simple. They didn't try hard enough either. They made their choice back then, and now I'm making mine. I've moved on with my life. I'm engaged to an amazing woman. I have a solid career, and I'm surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything by cutting my family off. Thanks again to everyone who commented on the original post. Your support made me feel more confident in my decision to stand my ground. Second story. My sister's delusional boyfriend demands I marry his friend and be a stay-at-home mom because his friend doesn't want a working woman. So I gave him a reality check, and my entitled sister demands I apologize to her boyfriend and accept God's plan. Then her boyfriend humiliated me, so my dad beat the SHT out of her boyfriend, and I cut ties with both my sister and her boyfriend. So I F22 have an older sister F28. She has 4 kids, and she loves being a mom and wants to be a stay-at-home mom. And I encourage her to do whatever she wants. She herself understands that I have no desire to be a mom right now, if not ever. I have two other older sisters who are like me who don't want to be stay-at-home mothers. This is important in the story. Her boyfriend is mad at me M27 because he asked me when I'm going to settle down and that he can introduce me to his friend M25 who wants a stay-at-home wife. I told him no, that I don't want to date anyone this year, and he got mad at me for some reason and asked me why. So I told him my ex-boyfriend left me with trust issues. My ex cheated on me for 6 months into a 3-year relationship. He told me we broke up in 2023 and I should start getting back out there. And I told him it's not his business, and he dropped it. But 2 days ago, he asked me if I wanted to be a stay-at-home wife and mother. And I told him no, that I don't. And I'm not even sure if I want kids, let alone to be married. He got defensive since his mom was a stay-at-home wife and mom. And I told him I don't see anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mom, but that I don't personally want to depend on a man for anything. And he once again got defensive and said not all men are the same. I told him he was correct, but again, not all women want the same thing. He said my sister wants to be a stay-at-home wife and mom. And I told him congratulations on finding that with my sister, but that I once again don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. He got mad because he overheard my conversation about me getting an IUD as well and told me I'm ruining God's plan to make me a mom one day. And I told him whether I want kids or not is not his business. He got mad at me and told me to get out of his home, so I did. My older sister is asking me to apologize to him and to not get an IUD since if I get pregnant, it's God's plan. And she also told me I should reconsider being a stay-at-home mom wife. I told her not everyone has that dream, and she accused me of not respecting stay-at-home mothers' wives, which is nothing but lies. My two other older sisters are on my side and said my sister's boyfriend shouldn't be too concerned with how I live my life. And if I don't want to depend on anyone for the rest of my life, that's my choice. He also said I'm going to hell for being bisexual. So I screamed that I guess his girlfriend, my sister, is also going to hell because she's bisexual herself, which he already knows about. Now their friends are calling me an arsehole, saying that he only cares about what I do with my body since it's God's body, and I should respect it and become a mom soon. So am I the arsehole for telling my sister's boyfriend it's not his business if I don't want to be a stay-at-home wife mom? TLDR. My sister's boyfriend is upset. I don't want to depend on a man and be a stay-at-home mom, and is also mad I'm thinking about getting an IUD in a few weeks, and that I shouldn't mess with my body since it's God's body, not mine. So I told him to mind his business. Edit to clarify. I did put this in some comments. But 3 out of her 4 kids aren't even his. My sister has a 7, 4, 3, and soon-to-be newborn. Edit 2. I get asked this question a lot. About why I was discussing getting an IUD with my sister's boyfriend. I wasn't discussing it with him. I and my 3 sisters were all discussing it at his house, but he wasn't there. He walked in, though, when I said I was thinking of getting an IUD. And that's when he butted into the conversation. And as soon as he said, God's body, not my body, I and my 2 other sisters started talking to him about it. And he raised his voice, so I raised mine. And we eventually left since I don't like conflict at all. Comments. Natural_inevitable 50. This guy sounds like a creep. Who is he to dictate what you do with your life, your career, and your body? I hope your sister knows about this and supports you. NTA. OP, my sister, who is with him wholeheartedly, supports him, and I should be a stay-at-home. She wants me to apologize to keep the peace. But I told her I'm done keeping the peace. He also supports the abortion ban, which is his opinion. I, on the other hand, am pro-choice. He wants a national abortion ban, even for SAW and incest, which makes me nervous to be in a room with him. She also supports this. Lilololov. NTA. His views on stay-at-home moms and traditional gender roles are his own, and he shouldn't be imposing them on you. Actual spell 14634. He's not really that traditional. He's not married to the mother of his child. Good Intelligent 2867. People are traditional only when it is convenient to them. Judgment NTA. Update 2 days later. So this is the update. I already knew I was going to go no contact with her boyfriend, as I don't feel safe around him. But I went ahead and called my sister to tell her and explain why I chose no contact with her. And she is now super mad at me, saying I overreacted and all that fun stuff. So I asked her if they were going to apologize. And she said they don't owe me an apology, and I owe him an apology. He overheard us on the phone, and once again got into the conversation. And I told him I have nothing to say to him. He told me he wanted to know an answer to 2 of his questions. Why I don't want to be an SDHM. Told him it's none of his business, and to stay in his lane. why I don't want to marry his friend. Told him that he isn't my type and never will be. And to not talk to me again. He told me if I don't stop overreacting, I won't have anything to do with my nephews and niece. And that NGO got to me. And I told him for my mental health, I'm done talking to him. And my sister said, okay, you made your choice, and we will make ours. So now I'm in no contact with both of them. Also found out my dad found out yesterday. And this morning after I was on the phone with them, he went and yelled at Josh and told him to back off. And that his daughter wasn't for sale or anything like that. And they got into a fist fight. And apparently my dad won. I'm not totally sure about that, though. My dad called me and apologized and asked me personally why I don't want to be a stay-at-home mother. So I told him the reason, which had to do with my dad and stepmom. And he apologized to me, saying that he never meant to do that to her. He was very abusive to her. At one point I saw him choke her, and I screamed. And he let her go but never apologized for it. So I decided to cut off my sister and her boyfriend. Which sucked because I won't be able to see my niece and nephews anymore. But my mental health and physical health are more important to me, to be honest. Comments. OP. There is one more thing that was said that I forgot to mention. So in my last post about this, there were so many people telling me to ask him when he's going to marry my sister, since they are not living in God's plan. So I asked him. His response was, it's not my business to know, to which I said, then it's not his business to know anything about what I do with my body, and who I date and all that. He got angry with me and proceeded to cuss me out. I honestly just laughed. Mew_fishing 2596. So it's his business to know about yours? Quiet_moon 2191. It's like he's trying to groom her to be a sister wife, or a communal wife with his friend. Creepy. Healthy_brain 5354. He probably promised his mate he can have the sister. Third story. OP did adult work, thinking she was helping her boyfriend pay his bills. Then she confessed to her best friend out of guilt, believing her friend would support her. But her friend lashed out and cut ties with OP. So OP came clean to her boyfriend, scared her friend would expose her. Now, having a meltdown, her boyfriend broke up with her. I don't even know where to start. My life feels like it's falling apart, and I have no one to talk to. I guess I need to get it all out and ask for advice, because I've backed myself into a corner. For context, I've been with my boyfriend, Ethan, for 3 years. He's 28 and in his 3rd year of residency, specializing in internal medicine. If you know anything about medical residencies, you'll know how brutal they are. Ethan works insane hours, sometimes up to 80 a week, and the pressure on him is intense. He's constantly exhausted, constantly stressed, but he's doing everything he can to build a future for us. And while I appreciate how hard he works, it's left me feeling like I'm on my own most of the time. We live together, but because of his schedule, I barely see him. On top of that, money has always been tight. His salary as a resident isn't much, and most of it goes toward rent, bills, and his mountain of student loan debt. I work as a waitress, but even pulling doubles, I wasn't making enough to cover my share of the bills. There were weeks when I didn't know how I'd pay for groceries or gas, let alone start saving for my future. That's when I started looking for other options. A little over a year ago, I created an OnlyFans account. At first, I told myself it was just to make some extra cash, something simple and harmless. I didn't even show my face in the beginning, just posted some risque pictures, but things took off quickly. People started asking for custom content, and the money was too good to pass up. I started getting more comfortable with it, and soon enough, I was making more on OnlyFans in a week than I made in a month at the restaurant. Then came the private work. I had a few subscribers reach out asking for in-person meetings, and the offers were so high that I couldn't ignore them. I told myself I'd be careful, I'd set boundaries, vet every client, and make sure I was always safe. And I've stuck to that. I've never done anything I wasn't comfortable with, and I've always been in control. The thing is, I've never felt guilty about it. It's not like I'm cheating on Ethan in any emotional sense. I love him, I really do. I see this as work. It's a transaction, not a relationship, and it doesn't change how I feel about him or our life together. But I know Ethan wouldn't see it that way. Ethan has always been traditional when it comes to relationships. He doesn't bring it up often, but it's evident in the way he talks about certain things. A few months ago, one of his close friends told him that he and his girlfriend were opening up their relationship. Ethan was really upset about it. He told me he couldn't believe his friend would even agree to something like that. He saw it as weak and disrespectful, and I could tell he was genuinely disappointed. What really threw me off was how serious he was about it. He even said he didn't think he could keep being friends with the guy because he couldn't respect someone who would go along with something like that. I remember trying to defend his friend, saying it's not really fair to judge someone else's choices like that. But Ethan wasn't hearing it. He was adamant that it wasn't okay. That conversation stuck with me because I realized how firm Ethan's beliefs really are. I've always known he's big on loyalty and commitment. But hearing him talk about cutting off his own friend over something like this made me realize there's no way he'd accept my choices. I actually thought about opening up to him during that argument, maybe telling him about the OnlyFans and private work. But I panicked. I figured if he was reacting like this to something that didn't even involve him directly, he'd completely lose it if I told him about my situation. So I backpedaled again and kept quiet. That doesn't mean it hasn't been hard to hide. The money I've been making has been difficult to explain. Ethan's asked me a few times how I've been able to afford certain things lately, like groceries, treating him to date nights, or even buying myself little luxuries here and there. I hated lying to him, but I felt like I didn't have a choice, so I told him my family was helping me out. He didn't question it too much, because my parents have always been pretty supportive. But every time he thanks me for being so good with money, I feel like the world's biggest fraud. The guilt started eating away at me, so I decided to tell my best friend, Megan. Megan and I have been close since college. She's always been the person I could confide in, and I thought she'd understand. I mean, she's not some conservative prude. She's always been super progressive, always talking about how women should be able to make their own choices and live life on their own terms. I really thought she'd be on my side. So I told her. I explained everything, how I started OnlyFans, how it's helped me stay afloat financially, and how I've been lying to Ethan about it because I know he wouldn't understand. I thought she'd get it, but instead, she completely flipped out on me. She said I was being selfish and deceitful, that I was betraying Ethan by keeping this from him. She said he deserves to know and accused me of stringing him along while building a life he doesn't even know about. I tried to defend myself, saying it's my body and my choice, and that it doesn't change how much I love Ethan. But she wasn't having it. She told me I was delusional if I thought this wouldn't blow up in my face, and said she couldn't be friends with someone who's this dishonest. That was 2 days ago, and I haven't heard from her since. Now I'm terrified. Megan isn't the type to go out of her way to hurt someone, but I could see her telling Ethan if she really thinks it's the right thing to do. And even if she doesn't, there's still the risk that someone else will find out. Ethan doesn't spend much time online, but all it takes is one of his coworkers or friends stumbling across my OnlyFans profile, and it could all come crashing down. I know I've messed up. I know I should have told Ethan the truth a long time ago. But now I'm stuck. If I tell him, I'll lose him, no question. But if I don't, there's a chance he'll find out anyway, and it'll be even worse. I came here looking for advice, not to get bashed. What should I do? Do I come clean and risk everything, or do I keep quiet and hope no one ever finds out? Am I really as horrible as Megan made me feel, or do I have a right to keep this part of my life private? Comments. Comment 1. Jesus Christ, OP. You're out here trying to justify lying to a man who's breaking his back to build a future for the both of you, while you're sneaking around doing something you know he'd never be okay with. Stop with the my body, my choice crap. This isn't about that. This is about you lying, deceiving, and breaking the trust of someone who thinks you're his partner. If the roles were reversed, and he was doing something he knew would destroy the relationship, you'd be here sobbing about betrayal. Honestly, you don't deserve this guy. He's out there working 80-hour weeks to make sure you have a roof over your head, and you're sneaking around doing sex work behind his back, hoping no one finds out. Spoiler alert. People always find out. You're living on borrowed time, and when this blows up, and it will, he's going to leave you so fast your head will spin. Do him a favor and tell him now so he can dump you and find someone who actually respects him and the relationship. Comment 2. Girl, you're acting like you're the main character in a tragic love story, but newsflash, you're not. You're the bad guy here. You're sitting here justifying how it's just work, and Ethan doesn't need to know. But the second you realized Megan wasn't going to stroke your ego, you flipped out. Let me make this really simple for you. You're lying to someone who has dedicated their entire life right now to being a good partner and building a future. You know this would crush him. But instead of facing the consequences like an adult, you're hoping you can just keep lying and skating by. Let's talk reality. This will come out. Whether it's your ex-best friend Megan, one of his coworkers, or some random dude who recognizes you online, the truth is going to hit him like a truck. And when it does, he's going to dump you, and honestly, he'd be right to. You don't respect him. You don't respect your relationship. And you don't even seem to respect yourself if you're clinging to this idea that everything's fine as long as he doesn't find out. Tell him the truth, break up, and go work on yourself. Because right now, you're the problem, not him. Update. First, let me start by saying this. Reddit is a cruel place. Most of you aren't here to help, let's be real. You just come to posts like mine to tear people down and feel better about yourselves. I came here looking for genuine advice. And while I got some thoughtful responses, thank you to those who actually tried to help. Most of you just wanted to crucify me. Congratulations, I guess. I hope dragging me through the mud gave you the dopamine hit you were looking for. This update is for the people who supported me or gave genuine advice. You deserve to know what happened. I took your advice and told Ethan the truth. I knew it would hurt him, but I didn't expect it to go the way it did. When I sat him down and explained everything, my OnlyFans, the escorting, how long I'd been doing it, he just froze. He didn't yell or lash out. He didn't say anything at first. Then he locked himself in the bedroom for hours. I could hear him crying through the door, and it broke my heart because I knew there was no way this was going to end well. When he finally came out, his face was red, and his eyes were puffy. He didn't even look at me at first. All he said was, "Is this some kind of prank?" When I told him it was real, that I was telling him the truth because he deserved to know, he just stood there for a second, shaking his head. Then he said, "I can't do this. I'm breaking up with you." That was it. No screaming, no fighting, no dramatic scenes. He just walked out the door. I think he went back to the hospital because it's the only place he ever goes, but I don't know for sure. He texted me later to say he wanted me to move out of the apartment as soon as possible. So, yeah, that's it. It's over. I won't pretend I'm not sad because I am. Ethan was an amazing partner, and I'll always love him for the time we spent together. But I also know this relationship was doomed the second I started keeping secrets. He deserves someone who aligns with his values and beliefs, and I deserve someone who understands mine. If I ever get into another serious relationship, and I'm honestly not sure I will, I know now that I have to be honest from the start. Keeping secrets like this just doesn't work, and it's not fair to either person involved. I'm proud of myself for finally coming clean, even if it was too late to save things with Ethan. And for those of you who are probably happy now, patting yourselves on the back because she got what she deserved, well, good for you. I'm moving forward. I'm getting better, and I'm learning from this. That's all. Comments. Comment 1. Oh, poor you. Reddit didn't give you the hugs and validation you were hoping for. So now we're the bad guys. You lied to your boyfriend for over a year, betrayed his trust, and wasted his time. But somehow we're the problem for pointing out how selfish and disgusting your behavior is. Please, take some responsibility for once in your life. You didn't just betray Ethan. You betrayed yourself by thinking you could spin this as anything other than what it is: manipulation and deceit. Good riddance to you both. Comment 2. Ethan is an absolute legend for walking away from you. Seriously, I'm impressed by how calm he was. Most people wouldn't have been that composed after finding out their partner lied for years and made a fool out of them. You didn't deserve him, plain and simple. He deserves someone honest, not someone who hides behind my body, my choice to justify their deceit. And by the way, stop acting like the world owes you sympathy. You're not the victim here. Ethan is. Good for him for escaping this mess. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.